Evening all, you join me here in beautiful Croyde Bay here in Devon. And if I'm squinting a little bit or the shadows are a bit funny, it's because I'm looking directly into the setting sun. It's absolutely fantastic up here. This house that me and my family and my extended family have rented for the week has fantastic views overlooking Croyde Bay, and we can even see out to the Isle of Lundy. Looks absolutely fantastic. I'm sitting here enjoying a rather zesty rosé. I'll be getting slowly inebriated as this podcast goes on. And just before I get into summarising what I've noticed this week in the news, one of the reasons I like coming to this particular house, and we've been coming here for a few years now, is that it's got a fantastic selection of books, just bookshelves scattered around the house. And it's this one. I absolutely love it, Quest for Adventure by Chris Bonington. And this is a collection of true stories of survival, exploration and endurance. This is the book where I first learnt about the Golden Globe Round the World Yacht Race of 1968-69, which featured the tragic story of Donald Crowhurst, which I've done a video on. And people still ask me about Donald Crowhurst. I'm only an amateur expert on his life. But this was the book that introduced me to his story, and I've done subsequent follow-up readings and watched quite a few of the films that have been made about his life. But there's some fantastic things here. If you can get a copy, it was written and first published in the early 1980s, and I think you can still get copies on Amazon. There's everything from Sir Francis Chichester circumnavigating the globe, the Kon-Tiki expedition, trying to discover the source of the Blue Nile under Blashford Snell, and various mountaineering escapades. And one of my favourites actually is a story about the linking of two cave systems in Yorkshire, Kingsdale Master Cave and Keld Head, in the late 70s. It's one of the most extraordinary cave diving explorations of all time, cave diving being the most dangerous of pastimes ever invented by man. So it's Quest for Adventure by Chris Bonington. Do recommend that. And after I finish reading this, I'll be reading Quest for Love. So what's caught my attention this week? Well, obviously in the UK, I'm going to just cover one topic this week, and that is the Conservative Party electing Boris Johnson as its leader, and he has subsequently become Prime Minister. And what that means and how it's all playing out at the moment. And as a Conservative and part of the mainstream right, what do I think about this? Well, it was really to be expected. I can now reveal that I did indeed vote for Mr. Johnson. He wasn't my first choice candidate, as when the initial list of candidates was released, I was firmly in the Dominic Raab camp. But when he was knocked out, I had to consider my other options. There was my family quite fond of Michael Gove because they know him personally. In fact, my mother-in-law's just been on the phone with him a few minutes ago. So I don't know what they were talking about because I've been out here in the garden. But while I am not one of Mr. Gove's vehement critics, I see a lot of good in what he does and his general approach, and I am impressed by his general knowledge on a wide range of subjects. I didn't go for him. I went for Boris Johnson, and I think the thinking behind that was that we needed somebody really to shake things up. We couldn't have another continuity Theresa May. And I thought it would be bad going with someone like Jeremy Hunt. I thought that's not offering the change. We're in a deadlock at the moment over Brexit and over a few other issues, and we need something that moves things along. And I thought that thing would be Boris Johnson. And so far, so good. Now, what I found surprising about his election as Conservative Party leader was that the initial reaction wasn't as hysterical as I thought it would be. A lot of us were predicting that there would be Boris derangement syndrome. And in the first 24 hours, we didn't get that. The Twitter didn't go into meltdown. Facebook was not that riled up. Even the mainstream press weren't that um, loopy about the thing. I mean, yes, they were to some extent, but it wasn't as bad as a lot of people on the mainstream right were predicting it would be. Now, that would come 48 hours after Boris Johnson was chosen as leader, because he started appointing his cabinet. And what we got instead of Boris derangement syndrome was Boris's cabinet derangement syndrome. The internet, the left-wing internet, just went into meltdown over Priti Patel being chosen to be the new Home Secretary. Oh my God, human rights violations! You know, as if Priti Patel is going to lead squads, death squads, into people's houses and drag them away for, I don't know, whatever reason. And it seemed like a hysterical response. Likewise, some of the responses about other members of the cabinet. Um, we were being promised doom and gloom, that the poor would be crushed underfoot. Now, in reality, with Boris's cabinet, it is a shift to a staunchly conservative cabinet and government, make no doubt about it. When you've got Dominic Raab as Foreign Secretary, Stephen Barclay's remaining as Brexit Secretary, Priti Patel, Jacob Rees-Mogg as Leader of the House of Commons, a job he seems born to do. And I'll get to Rees-Mogg in a moment, because already he's trying to make an impact there. But this is a more staunchly conservative cabinet than we've seen in a number of years. This isn't a balance between the wets and the dries. This is pretty much a dry cabinet, and that's no bad thing. I know a lot of people and the pro-EU and on the progressive left are absolutely having a meltdown about it. But as has been mentioned in Jonathan Haidt, and he quotes John Stuart Mill and Bertrand Russell at one point, that you need the yin and the yang of progressive liberalism and conservative free marketeers. You need that kind of the balance between the two for a healthy political system, so we can have debates that can be quite polarized, but at least we're having debates. We're not trying to shut down the other side. And it's an indictment of how British politics has gone in the last 20 years, that people don't think we can have those kind of yin and yang, conservative, liberal, statist and free market arguments anymore. I think it's a shame we can't do that without people being called fascist or whatever. And I think that this will do. I think this will do British politics good, and I think it will do society good, just to have something a little bit more staunchly conservative. Of course, they'll call them a bunch of fascists and goose-stepping authoritarians, but that's not what we've got. We've got something that is mainstream conservative. Oh, with a bit of liberalism chucked in there. We've got Sajid Javid, and still Boris Johnson is quite a classical liberal in quite a few of his politics. So people say, oh, it's got lurched to the far right or the hard right. It hasn't done that at all. What's happened is that the Conservative Party for the last decade shifted to the centre under Cameron, and then under May started raiding the progressive left's territory. And it was revealed that there was quite a number of Conservative MPs that were, say, class of 2005 or 2010, or even 2015 intake, who were, you wonder why they were Conservative members of Parliament or Conservative Party members in the first place. I suppose that they like big business, as a lot of Europhiles do. They think big business or the big state is the solution to a lot of problems, and they won't find a home in the Labour Party. They might have found a home with the Blairite Labour Party, but certainly not in its current iteration. And so they got talked into, or felt that they could make inroads in the Conservative Party and refashion the Conservative Party into a new Labour, but with a blue ribbon on it. And they've been outfoxed and outdone by the membership, who's just grown sick and tired of a Conservative Party that is no longer represents the mainstream right or even the centre right. And this is what we've seen. We've seen the kind of pushing away of those in the Conservative Party ranks who want to occupy the progressive left's territory. Some like Heidi Allen, Alan Soubry, defected. Heidi Allen's tweet was weird when she heard about the cabinet. I'm so angry right now. Go take yourself down to Nando's, cheer yourself up. I mean, this is not a cabinet to get angry about. This is a cabinet that will be a challenge to the progressive left. I thought Boris Johnson's maiden speech in the House of Commons hit the nail on the head. He said this is going to be a democratic government. The Conservative Party is the party of democracy. I thought that was very smart because now it's put everybody else, Labour, Liberal Democrats, the nationalist parties, and the independent group, what's remaining of them, as they're scattered all over the place. They have to now count by saying we are the party of democracy. The Conservatives have put the other parties on the back foot. Now they've got to respond. Are they the party of democracy? Well, how can they be if they want to overturn referendum results? If they are trying to widen hate speech and try and control the political discourse so that there is only one acceptable opinion. And I think that was a very smart move of him. I was going to mention Jacob Rees-Mogg as well. Everybody loved his put down of Tom Brake, the Liberal Democrat MP, which was great. But what I really liked about Rees-Mogg was his style guide that he issued to the civil service, that certain words, buzz phrases, certain irritating buzzwords were now to be banned and people were to be referred to as a squire. He's bringing a bit of formality back to the House of Commons. Now, you may think he's being a fuddy-duddy old Victorian about this, but with the political discourse, and in particular in the House of Commons becoming quite toxic and aggressive, and also having a largely politicised civil service, to have some kind of etiquette guide, so trying to snap them out of this by making them a little bit more formal, a little bit more prudent in their language. I think it's trying to rebalance the British political system into what it was famous for the world over, as this kind of the mother of all parliaments. And I think I see what Rees-Mogg is trying to do, and I think he's trying to get the UK Parliament back to being the mother of all parliaments. And I know it does look like there's some kind of spider kind of on my face, or tiger stripe camouflage. But anyway, I will make no apologies for the lighting conditions here. So my initial thoughts is that this is going to be very interesting. I think it's good that what we have is a mainstream Conservative government, because it gives the Conservative Party an identity. Now, you may like me, loathe Jeremy Corbyn's vision of Labour, which is hard socialist, but at least we know what it is. Okay, and what the Conservative Party done has shifted from really being in progressive left territory, and it's just shifted it. So I would say between the centre right and the mainstream right. That's where it's been positioned. It hasn't been so the shift for the Conservative Party towards the right is nowhere near as extreme as the shift that the Labour Party under Corbyn has gone to the left. And people are going to see, I think, a kind of more conservative government. Now, the other thing that I'm hoping for with Boris Johnson becoming Prime Minister is that he seems to be immune to the press. They can say what they like about him. He just bounces back, carries on regardless. Almost he ignores the press. If they want to grill him, he's offering them cups of tea. And I hope we see a little bit more of that. With first 2 days, we've seen serious Boris. I know serious Boris lurks there, because when he was Mayor of London, you got a lot of serious Boris, as well as the guy who's trapped on a zip wire and making all the gas, but you do get serious Boris, and that's what we've had for the last 2 days. But if he becomes Teflon coated to the press, doesn't care, I think that's great. I'm sick and tired of governments sort of kowtowing to the press. Oh, what will the press say if we do this? The press's job is there to report, and with their falling TV viewing figures and their falling circulation numbers, now is the time for a government just to act as if they don't care what the press thinks of them. So this is where I think we're at. I'm very excited. I'm not saying it's all going to be perfect and rosy. It may not be as staunchly conservative as a lot of people on the mainstream right would want it to be, and I think it might still be a little bit too statist and liberal for many people on the libertarian right are. But I think in terms of realpolitik, I think this is a good move, and we'll just have to wait and see. But I like what I see so far, and even though there's some grumblers and Remain. I think Hammond and Rory Stewart, Philip Hammond and Rory Stewart, are getting together to try and block a no-deal Brexit at all costs. I like the new government's response, which is like, let's assume that the EU is not going to buckle on any issue, so let's plan for that. And this is what should have happened 3 years ago. We have a government that's laid out clearly that it wants to leave the EU. It's sending out a clear message at the moment. This isn't the same as leave means leave or no deal is better than a bad deal, because I don't think Theresa May really, she never sounded wholly credible, and the people that surrounded her never sounded credible saying that. Whereas I think this group, this cabinet, this prime minister sounds more credible when they say that. Anyway, we shall wait and see. And usually I end with a kind of horrific progressive left-wing story saying this really takes a biscuit. But you know what? With this new cabinet and this new prime minister, we're having Jaffa cakes. Until next week.